speech language professionals. And this term speech language professional encompasses both speech pathologists and those speech therapists that we no longer give that certificate, but we have grandfathered them into the process. And so for the purpose of brevity and so that I don't get too tongue-tied today, I'm going to use the acronym SLP, or just speech folks. I don't mean any disrespect to either group, so I'm just going to do that as a matter of housekeeping. And before we get started, if you will, please keep your mics muted until you need to speak. And feel free, as you all know, especially any of you who have been with us for any amount of time, we try to keep things very laid back. We're open to any questions you have at any point in time. Just hop on the mic, do the raise your hand sign, symbol in the upper task bar, or just type it in the chat, and we're all monitoring chat. Okay, Roshana? So today what we're going to do, our main goal is to provide you with the information you need to create and manage evaluations for the SLPs in your district that you evaluate. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. As a side note, if you've not completed the on-demand evaluator training in Moodle, or if your special areas manager has not submitted your information to Dr. Kimberly Howard for your credential yet, you cannot be added to an evaluation and will be unable to see the content in your own dashboard that I share today unless you're already either an SLP going through the evaluation or you are already on an evaluation team to evaluate someone. So again, if you haven't completed the Moodle training, this is my shameless plug for it. Vicki was mainly responsible for the SLP portions of the Moodle training, and it's a really good deep dive into evaluating those folks. Okay. Our agenda, we've already done our introductions. We're going to go through a brief overview of the evaluation model for the SLPs. We're going to talk just for a second about contract levels and how that affects the components that are required for the model. We're going to talk about understanding a rubric. A lot of folks aren't used to that. We went from the SAFE-T portfolio-based system to this rubrics-based system, and so we're going to talk just a few minutes about the rubric, and then we're going to deep dive into actual SC Lead, and I'm going to walk you through a demo evaluation in SC Lead. Okay, now our next slide is talking about who are you required to evaluate for speech? I get this question a lot. My colleagues get this question a lot. And it's one of the most frequently asked questions we probably get. SLPs, in this language on the slide, is taken directly from the guidelines and from state statute and regs. SLPs, that's the pathologists and therapists who are employed directly by a school district. In other words, you sign a contract that has the district name and address on the letterhead. You sign it with the HR person in the district. You are employed by the district pays into your retirement. You have state health plan. All of those things are the components of, are you employed by a school district? Those SLPs will participate in the district's ADEPT evaluation process using the appropriate contract level for your certification level. SLPs should be evaluated every year. SLPs on an internship certificate must participate in the induction program and then be assigned a mentor, and then they progress, must have a successful ADEPT evaluation to get a professional certificate. So SLPs on a professional certificate must successfully complete the ADEPT summative evaluation at the annual contract level in order to be eligible for a continuing contract. So if they come to certification and they already have their Cs, their certificate of clinical competence, and they are, certified by LLR and all that, then they can be given a professional certificate straight out of the box. If they come to you with that professional certificate, it's a lot like reciprocity. If we give them a reciprocity certificate, professional certificate, they still have to have that annual summative their first year on that professional in order to be offered a continuing contract. So again, this is one of those tricky situations with contracts that you do need to really go into SC Educator and look at their experience and their history to see how they got that professional certificate. SLPs on a continuing contract, the evaluation may be summative, formative, or goals-based. Again, that's still at the discretion of the district, always. But continuing formative evaluations are not required for SLPs who maintain their ASHA Certificate of Clinical Competence. So if that SLP maintains their Cs, they do not have to go through that 5th year recertification formative evaluation. They can stay on GBE and keep going. The GBE is the SMART goal, and we'll talk about that in just a little while. Now, on the flip side of that situation, if your SLP or if you are an SLP and you are employed by either a hospital system, a private agency, a consulting firm, you own your own LLC and you are your own consultant, and you work for a district, but you work on a 1099 instead of a W-2, that is, and you get paid from accounts payable and not from payroll, that is a separate situation. If you are contracted as an employee of anyone other than the school district, even if you work in the school district, the district is not required to evaluate you. They can, it's optional, and they can report the results. However, it's their discretion. A lot of smaller districts who contract with hospital systems and outside agencies to provide SLPs do that because they don't have the capacity to support that role. They don't have anybody in a district office that's over speech language and that sort of thing. So it's one of those situations, if you're not sure, reach out to one of us in the ADEPT office, and we're happy to explain to you and break down and do some research to help you figure out what's best for your SLP. All right, next slide. This is just a brief overview. I don't want to dig down deep into contract levels because that gets real confusing real fast. And a lot of you probably have nothing to do with setting contract levels at any rate, but just know that contract level and certification level affect what is required for ADEPT. So if you are on an initial certificate, you're just coming in fresh out of your program, you don't have any experience and you don't have your C's yet, and you're working towards that, then you would probably most likely be placed on an induction formative contract, which requires at least one observation per semester. Both semesters are required. And this says, this is the wrong slide. But let's see what the right information. I need to correct that, but it requires that what you do is based on your contract level. There is no year-long plan for for speech language folks, but the GBE is replaced by a SMART goal. And so it's still goals based because the G in GBE is goal, but they are, but that one professional goal serves as the GBE.
Okay, Beverly, and the correct ADEPT guidelines is placed in the chat.
Yes, the link in the chat is for the these at-a-glances that I created for you all that are they're just one pagers for each group. This is just, I took the wrong slide out when I was fixing them earlier. So I will fix that before it's published on the website, I promise. Okay, next slide, Shonda. So looking at the rubric, the speech language rubric, it consists of 4 domains: planning, instruction, collaboration, and professionalism. and 18 indicators. There are 4 performance levels for the descriptions of practice. For the planning, instruction, and collaboration domains, professionalism is slightly different, using a combination of the reflections from the SLP and the administrative evaluator. And that's a little difference from some of the other groups. Okay, let's look at the parts of the rubric. When you look at that rubric, it can be a little overwhelming. It looks like a lot of words and a lot of dots. This slide is taken from your rubric to highlight the elements. The domains are the big buckets. You'll see the yellow tab there pointing to planning, and that's the domain. Then we break the domain down into indicators, and the indicators are the specific elements of practice. The SLP indicators were pulled directly from the ASHA standards, and that those are located in the very far left column at the top. So this particular, I know it's hard to see, but this particular indicator on the screen is program plans. So then your descriptors are the bullets. That's where we break down the indicator into what actually looks and sounds like, what the indicator actually looks and sounds like in practice. What are we actually looking for? The performance. And then, of course, you've got your 4 performance levels, and those are in that gray bar at the top: exemplary, proficient, needs improvement, and unsatisfactory. And then the sources of evidence, that's a column that we have added to the special areas rubrics that doesn't exist for the teachers, because one of the overwhelming things that we heard when we were building these models was that administrators didn't have a clue what went on in the speech room or in the library, behind the scenes, or in the school counselor's office. And so what we wanted to do was align the indicators and actual sources of evidence where they could find it, to help them know where to look. And so we have a whole column there with suggested places to look. One of the main sources of evidence is scripted pre- and post-conference questions. Those questions are aligned directly to indicators, and I'll show you those in a few minutes when we get to SC Lead. On the next slide, we'll talk about how each special area rubric has those 4 performance levels, from unsatisfactory at a 1 to exemplary at a 4. And you'll notice that the descriptors are increasingly student-centered as we move to the left. This is to encourage the growth of that student-centered instruction. Going back to that administrative support on the next slide, the administrative support section for each domain within the guidelines provides sources of evidence for each domain. Those scripted questions for the pre and post conference are referenced to each indicator. And as you become familiar, you'll notice that we talk about this a tremendous amount in the educator training as well, in the evaluator training as well on Moodle. Okay.
Beverly, we do have one question in the chat. If you want to go ahead and check on it before we get too far, it says, how do you handle recertification evaluations with SLPs who have dual certification?
Any adept evaluation must be completed in the area in which the teacher is practicing their certification. So if you're certified, for instance, like if I'm certified as an administrator, but I'm also certified as a middle level language arts teacher, if I'm an admin, then I would do a GBE. If I'm a teacher in the classroom, then I'm going to do the SCTS 4.0. If the SLP is dually certified and certified in, say, middle level language, but they're actually practicing as an SLP, then they would go through the model as an SLP. If they have maintained their Cs, they don't have to do anything but a GBE that year. If they have not maintained their Cs, then they would go through the 5th year recertification, and that's in that chart as well. So it would be a continuing formative if they have not maintained their Cs. And that's in the language on that slide back there, and we'll give you these slides. They'll be published. This is recorded, and it will be on our website in shortly. I can't give you a timeline because these things have to go through accessibility. They have to go through closed captioning. And so as soon as we get it back from the other office that does all of that work for us, then we will publish it to our website. The domain weights for SLPs, planning is 25%, instruction 40%, collaboration 10%, professionalism 25%. Again, professionalism is highest for our SLPs and our school counselors because of the confidential nature of their work. And remember that professionalism domain is a combination of scores from the practitioner and from the evaluator. Now let's take a look at the overview of the, oh, there's that chart. That's the correct one. I knew I had put the correct one in there. I just didn't take the school council one out. So this is the correct one. So you'll see on here where it says continuing formative fifth year research. That's again for those folks who do not maintain their Cs. And you'll see in here, it talks about, you know, what can be waived, what can't be waived. And that's one of the things that can be the formative reeval can be waived if the SLP has maintained their Cs. So I hope that helps. All right. On the next slide, we just talk about evaluation setup. Just want to make sure that if you set them up correctly from the jump, then you have fewer problems on the back end. There's less cleanup for us to all be on the phone trying to get with you to do in March if we set everything up correctly now. And so one of the things I want to point out is making sure that you have the contract level and the evaluation level set correctly. Make sure that you have for your special areas, folks, I'm going to show you in just a few minutes, make sure that you set the evaluation model correctly because you do have to switch it from that SETS 4.0 to the ADEPT 2020 for special areas. Make sure that you have assigned an evaluation chair in your evaluation team. And then when adding team members, the evaluator needs to be given permissions. Make sure you click those permissions before you click their name and add them to the team. If the teams are created at the district level, we get this question a lot too. If the district administrator creates the teams, the principal cannot change the teams. If the principal creates the teams, then the district or the principal can create the teams. So power always rises to the top. Remember that. The orientation date must be entered by an ADEPT administrator or evaluator before the teacher can sign the orientation. So those are just little hiccups that we run into that are simple things when you think about them in the big scheme of things, but sometimes you just get in a hurry and you get tripped up. One of the other things that is very different about the speech language folks is that when you are selecting observations, worksheets, you need to make sure that you designate which form you need to use. Remember that part of that evaluation is you must observe a therapy session and an IEP meeting for each semester. When when observations are required, the therapy session and the IEP are both required. There is one situation where either one or the other can be waived, but we'll talk about that in a little while. So just be sure that you always click in that drop down and select which one you're doing. All right. Okay, we're going to go to SC Lead now, and I'm going to start sharing my screen. So one of the things that I also want to point out can y'all see my SC Lead?
Yes, we can see your SC
Okay.
Lead.
Great. All right. So you will log in One thing I did want to point out is that I will be using the demo site, the testing site. If you do not have the testing site and you are an ADEPT coordinator and you wish to have the testing site, you can reach out to support@sclead.org and request a testing site be set up for you. Most folks got these testing sites when we first developed SC Lead, and so most of you probably don't even remember your login and username, but it does come in handy if you need to grab screenshots that are confidential. Also, for the purposes of this training, I have used and relied heavily, I will say heavily, on these help resources. We don't have them in the testing site, but we do maintain them on the real SC Lead. On your homepage, under your profile box, you'll see help resources. There's a whole section there labeled ADEPT 2020. These are what the steps that I'm following to create this demo came straight from there, because I don't do these evaluations every day. I needed a reminder. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pretend I'm a principal. So my first thing is I've got to remember to go over here and sign in as the principal. And I'm the proud principal of Sunnyside 6774. So I would go to my school dashboard and I would click staff. Now, there are bulk ways that you can assign these evaluations, but for your special areas folks, you may not want to do that. You may just have one that you need to assign. So I only have one speech language pathologist, one therapist, and so I am going to click details, and I'm going to check first to be sure that my speech therapist is coded correctly. So I see that that's a speech therapist. The position is speech therapist, the role is educator, and the evaluation type is speech language professional. Correct. Okay, great. So now I'm going to go back. And I'm going to click on her name. And I'm going to look to see that, oh, she doesn't have an evaluation set up yet. So I'm going for this year. So I'm going to add evaluation. I'm going to click on the academic year. This is 23-24. I'm going to click on my district and verify the district. The evaluation type will be speech language professional. And the evaluation level, this is one of those situations where she needs an annual 1 summative in order to progress to a continuing contract. So I'm going to click summative. And I'm going to click submit. Then I'm going to get this evaluation settings page and I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to make sure first and foremost that this says ADEPT 2020 for special areas. If it doesn't, then I would click edit and change it. Then I'm going to scroll down to my ADEPT settings. I see that she's SLP, summative, but I see that her contract level is no data. Well, that's no good. We've got to change that. So I will click edit and go into my settings and change her to an annual 1 summative. As soon as I maintain that she is at the correct, staffed at the correct school, I will click submit. And then I will go down to make sure that everything is correct as it is. Now, if for any reason, say she needs to go out on maternity leave or is out for an extended purpose, or you have created this evaluation in error, this is where you would come to remove this evaluation. If you are ending it early because she is out long term, then you would close it. If you create it by mistake, you can click remove. And that's for the ADEPT administrator who creates the evaluation. Whether it's the school principal, whoever has those rights. Okay, now I'm going to go back to status, and I'm going to see that I have created a 23-24 evaluation at Sunnyside School District, ADEPT 2020 for special areas, speech language professional, summative annual 1. So we're ready to go. You saw that her None of her bubbles or bars or donut are filled yet because we haven't assigned her orientation. So now I would add my evaluator. Remember, you're going to add the chair and the names of any of your certified credentialed evaluators will populate in this box, and you would just click whoever you wanted to add as her evaluation chair and click add. For whatever reason, the testing site is not letting us do that right now, and so we can progress the other way. But it'll still let me add the orientation. So I go over to orientation. And remember, what did we say had to be set before the educator could sign the orientation? The orientation date. So I will click edit. And I will enter the date. And so for the purposes of this exercise, we're going to say that Monday is going to be her orientation date. Okay. So I've assigned her orientation. I've clicked into the date. And now I will step out of this and go and be her. So now I'm going to sign in. I'm pretending to be myself, the speech therapist. I'm going to find this year's evaluation. I'm going to click details. I see my orientation here. And I'm going to sign my orientation. Now, once I have signed my orientation, I can go ahead and notice that before I signed it, nothing was over here except orientation. But now that I've signed that orientation, all of the required components for my specific contract, my specific evaluation level have populated over here. Now, if I was not an annual one summative, if I was on continuing GBE, the only thing I would see over here would be orientation and goals and professionalism and results. That would be all I would see. But because I'm on an annual one summative and I wanted to show you how to enter those observations, therefore, that's why we're looking at all this and seeing all this. So now remember, I'm pretending to be the therapist here. So I've already signed my orientation. And now I want to go ahead and set my goal. So I would go to goals. And I said this yesterday, and I want everyone to just kind of take a second. I know we get in such a hurry to click all the clicks that we stop reading stuff. But a lot of times I go back and I miss something. So I've started going back and actually reading the language that we crafted in here with SC Lead. And some of it will answer questions that you may have or help you from getting tied up later with something technical. So I look at this and I see that formatively as GBE goals for growth and reflection for special area educators or others that don't meet the SLO business rules as a component of a goals-based summative or formative evaluation or to address areas of weakness. That's the purpose of professional goals. So in other areas that are being evaluated, such as classroom-based teachers or school counselors or librarians, that professional goals is way down at the bottom of this page because they have to do a student growth goal. But the SLPs are only required to do a professional goal. So, and that professional goal can be aligned to your Cs. It needs to be a SMART goal aligned to your ASHA standards or your South Carolina standards, which are the same. So I would click into my goal. I would say my goal name is, and I'm not a speech therapist by any means, but I don't know. Somebody give me a goal for a speech professional. I'm just going to type letters in, but So I would type in the name of my goal so that I would know what my focus was. And then you're going to word it as a professional SMART goal. And we've given some guidance to that on our website. We've linked it to the ASHA website, but this is not going to let you progress unless you put a certain number of characters in. So I would put my SMART goal in here. And remember, it has to be measurable. It has to be timely. And then goal strategies. How am I going to achieve this goal? What am I going to do in my personal practice, my personal professional practice? What am I going to do to achieve this goal? Okay. And you're not going to necessarily maybe have the outcome yet, but you may put the actual what you hope to achieve here. You can always change it. And then you're going to put the evidence as you maintain it. As you add it, you can add it during the conferences.
Beverly, can we take a pause for a few questions while you're at SMART goals?
Yeah, let me finish the goal and then we'll talk. And so then we're going to talk about how this affects student growth. It's not necessarily a student growth goal because it's your professionalism that you're trying to grow. But in growing our professionalism, our professional practice and growing as professionals, that should impact student growth. So how is you achieving this goal going to affect student achievement and so our student growth? And so you would enter that there. It has to be aligned to one of the indicators in the rubric. And so I'm going to say that my professional goal was improving my comfort level during IEP meetings. I may be nervous about meeting with parents and conducting IEP meetings. That may be something I want to work on, interpersonal skills and conferencing skills. So I may click on conducting IEP meetings. And then always scroll to the bottom of a screen in SC Lead and anytime you're putting any information in SC Lead, always scroll to the bottom to make sure that you are saving or submitting. Because it's not going to keep that material that you just typed in if you don't click one or the other. If it offers you a save button, always click save. You can always go back and edit or delete or remove. There's the edit button, there's the delete button, if you wanted to remove it altogether, you put it there by mistake, altogether, remove. You can delete, or like I said, you can edit. And so then your goal is ready. If you have any documents that you want to attach, any test scores, any screening documents, any kind of budget request, anything that you want to attach to support that professional goal, here's your attachment section. You would have done that in the other screen. And then you'll notice you have a preliminary review, a mid-year review, and a final review. That preliminary review can be combined. If you're having observations, it can be combined with those observation conferences, but it needs to be done, and that timeline is in your ADEPT plan, but it needs to be done at the beginning to approve the goal that you've set and your work towards that goal. And you would meet and you would sign here. Okay, questions?
Yes, so we have a couple questions in the chat. One is, can an administrator conduct an orientation who has not undergone the special area training?
No.
Okay. And then the next one, can we keep the same SMART or professional goal for more than a year, or do we have to have a new goal every school year?
I sent a district administrator language about that just recently. The district was asking about, they set 5-year goals, I think, or something like that. Just keep in mind that for the purposes of this evaluation, it has to be timely. So you have to have some type of measure that you're going to achieve this year. So if you may have a long range goal, which is 5 years, and you may use it every year for 5 years, but you need to make sure that you have something in this goal that's measurable in this window of time. Because keep in mind, this is going to be evaluated. I mean, you're going to do one of these every year. And so when it's being evaluated, that's the window that it needs to have evidence in. That's the window. So yes, you can include that that's part of a 5-year plan or a 3-year plan, but we really don't want, I mean, I'm just going to be brutally honest. I submitted the same GBE goal for like 6 years in a row and just copied and pasted it, and nobody noticed. That wasn't growing me as an educator. And so using the same goal, the same measures, the same standards every single time, that's not growing anybody. We need to see growth. So what progress did you make in this year to get to achieve that goal? So you need to set some type of short range measurement that's going to help you get to the eventual big goal. But if you're going to use the same goal 5 years in a row or 3 years in a row, I would suggest having 2 goals and have that one to be one of the goals and have the other goal to be something much more specific to your professionalism. Because remember, this is affecting you as a professional, it's not the school's goal, it's not the district's goal, it's your goal. How are you going to grow as a professional speech language professional? How are you going, what are you wanting to do this year to improve your practice? I hope that answered that question.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And that also goes to if you've got a school that's got 3 or 4 SLPs in it, all the SLPs should not have the same goal and they should not have the same information. I mean, we don't come and check, of course, but it's about that particular person's, just like when we get to the observation in a second, I'm going to talk about areas of reinforcement and refinement. Those areas of reinforcement and refinement need to tie to that professional goal so that you are building and increasing your professional effectiveness. This is a growth model. If you are using the same goal every year, you're not growing. And it's individual. It should be very individual. Any other questions? Okay, so now I've done my plan. So now I'm waiting to hear from my principal as to when I'm going to be observed for the first time and when are we going to approve my professional goal. So now I'm splitting my personalities. I feel like that movie with oh gosh, what's that guy's name? The one where he was all the different people. It wasn't Split. I can't remember what it was, but so now I'm going back to being the principal. And I'm going to come to my evaluations tab and I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to see that my speech lady has signed her orientation. And here's her donut. You see that the donut has filled in for the orientation. So you also see, all right, preliminary cycle fall. I've got to address those professional goals somehow. I've got to address observations and I've got to look at evaluation conferences. So this kind of keeps me on track as far as what do I need to do in the fall as the administrator on the team. And then what do I need to do in the final cycle? We're going to do these same sessions again in January. And so I'll address final cycle in January. But if you can get this part done, it should help you. So I've looked at her orientation and I've seen that it's signed. And I can sign it or not, it doesn't matter. It's not going to stop the process if I don't. But then I want to look at her goals and see what her professional goal is so that I kind of know how that professional goal can inform me in how do I best support her in her areas of reinforcement and refinement when we get to that point. Also, you'll notice the professional learning here under professional goals. This is a great place as her evaluation chair. If I know of something in the professional learning library that would help her or benefit her, then I could definitely add that here. Now, the professional learning library is not synced with the testing dashboard, so I can't click on here and demo how to do that from here. But you all have been inundated with PLL stuff as far as how to assign courses in real SC Lead for the professional learning library. But that is a great source of support for them. And it also helps them know, that practitioner know that whoever's on that evaluation team is actually looking to support them. So I've looked at her goal. And so I decide, okay, I'm keeping that in mind that I've still got to have that preliminary conference to approve the goal. I've looked at it so that I have an idea of where I'm going or where she's going in her professional practice this year. So then I go to observations and I want to go ahead and add one. So I add the first observation, click add observation. This is for the fall semester. I'm going to go in on September the 21st. That gives me time to have the pre-conference on the 19th or the 20th. I'm going to complete all these drop downs and remember observation form. Am I going to see a therapy session this time or am I going to see an IEP meeting? Remember that I have to see both each semester. So I'm going to go into a therapy session this time. And I'm going to call Ms. Knopf down to my office and I'm going to ask, or I'm going to stop by and I'm going to ask her, what are you doing first? Which one can I come and watch? When can I come? Can I come Thursday? She says, sure. And so I go in and set up my pre-conference. So my pre-conference planning sheet, I click edit. Now, remember, I talked to you earlier about the actual language in SC Lead. It reminds you what's required. It reminds you how to accomplish what's required. And it kind of gives you some descriptions of how to implement the elements that are necessary. So my pre-conference date, she agreed that I could come to a therapy session on the 21st. She said that actually Wednesday would suit her better for the pre-conference. So we're going to do Wednesday at 2:45. And then when I sit down on Wednesday, I'm going to do the introduction, the greeting, setting the tone. I'm going to say this is going to take about 15 minutes. We're just going to review the process. I'm going to tell you what I'm looking for when I come into the therapy session. You tell me anything you have questions about. And remember that these questions in the pre-conference and post-conference are required, but they're also tied directly to the indicators. So I'm going to ask her these required questions in the pre-conference. And I'm going to type in my answers as she gives them. Now, if I don't want to do that while she's talking, I can always jot these down on my tablet or in a notebook if I'm a handwriter and do this at a later time. Now you'll notice the first two questions are just basically general questions. They don't necessarily have the indicators tied to them. But the others do. For instance, number 3 says planning domain, demonstrating knowledge and skills. 4, planning domain, planning program and services. So they do tell you, we do tell you which indicator they are tied to. So you put in your answers to all of the questions. forgot that there were so many in this SLP pre-conference. And then question number 10 goes back to what we were talking about a while ago. What is your professional SMART goal for this year, and how is it connected to the indicators of the SLP rubric? Now, if I've already done my research and my homework, I've already read that SMART goal, and I probably should already know the answer to this question. Now, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, or she hasn't put it in yet and released it to you, then of course you could go ahead and ask that question. If I have any follow-up questions, I would type them in here. I would close, and don't forget to save. So now I've got my pre-conference planning sheet. I've scheduled my pre-conference for the 20th. I have all of my questions scripted and answers recorded. So now it's time for me to go into the conference, into the therapy session and observe. Now, if your district allows scripting in SC Lead, you are welcome to type your script in here. You don't have to, but you do need to identify which indicators you observed if you type in a scripting note, and make sure you click Add Scripting Note. Then you will go to self-reflection. Whether you use that scripting piece or not, you have to go into the self-reflection piece and click Allow Educator Self-Reflection. After completing your observation scoring, the observer should allow the educator to begin the self-reflection form. The observer scores will not be shared with the educator until the post-conference form is signed. So I still need these self-reflection scores as part of the growth component. Any attachments, if I have any notes, any documentation that I want to include from that therapy session, I would add that here. If you took notes by hand during your pre-conference and your observation and you want a permanent record of those, you could snap a screenshot or snap a picture with your phone. You could upload those pictures there. And then you're going to click Submit. Now, here is where things get a little tricky. In order to score observations for special areas, we must go and complete a worksheet. That's where you actually record the scores. So each evaluator must complete a worksheet for each observation. So I'm going to add a worksheet for the fall semester for my school for SLP, excuse me. Now remember, my observation form for this is the therapy session. So I've got to click that as well. And then I'm going to click Submit. So now I have set up my worksheet. And then please notice, once all domains have been scored, click the worksheet details to add your signature. So now I'm going to decide, okay, I want to include planning and instruction on this worksheet. So I'm going to look at planning. I'm going to type in the evidence for planning that I found in my script that I observed during that therapy session. I'm going to type that in. I'm going to add any attachments that support that score, and I'm going to add the score. And then for the next, for program planning and services, I'm going to add my supporting evidence. I'm going to type it in this section, and I'm going to add the score. No one will ever see your worksheets as an evaluator but you. But on the flip side of that, if you don't click save, you won't be able to see it either because it will go away. So click save. Then I go to instruction and I click on the instruction Because remember, I've just seen that therapy session with that one-on-one instruction. So between the therapy session and that pre-conference, I should have plenty of evidence. I'm going to add all of this to my worksheet. Going to make sure my scores are present. I'm sorry, I know this takes a while, but it won't let me get to the next step if I don't do it correctly. Even though I'm putting gibberish in here. Look like I need speech therapy. This is what Siri does on my phone when I try to use voice to text. Always, 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 I can't stress to you enough, there is nothing more disheartening than typing in all of that and doing all of the work and taking it seriously and trying your best and getting down and not going far enough to the bottom to save it. That makes your stomach hurt. Okay, so once I have all of that, then I go back to evaluation conferences. You'll see that my worksheet is still in progress. I go back to observations. I go to my observation. You notice it's still in progress. And I go to post-conference. Now at this point, hopefully, the educator has done their self-score. As the evaluation chair, I'm going to look, or the evaluator, I'm going to look to see what her self-scores are. I'm going to compare those scores to my scores that I scored her. And then I'm going to create, and I'm going to read her area of reflection and refinement and reinforcement. And I'm going to kind of compare those to what I've suggested so that I know how to best coach her in this post-conference coaching conversation. So I go to the planning sheet. Again, it walks me through the process. It tells me exactly what I should say when. And then remember, I've got more questions that are aligned to the rubric. So I have these questions that I'm asking. How did you document IEP progress during this session? So that ties to planning. So now if I need to go back and add these things or change my score, I can go back and add this evidence. And then I create my plan for her reinforcement. And why is that the area of reinforcement? And any questions I have that might support her in identifying that same area or supporting it or tweaking something. And then I will identify that area of refinement. Again, any questions I have about how she's gotten to this point, how we're going to get to the next point. What can we do to best support her in this measure? Can I free you up to go see somebody? Do you need me to suggest something in the PLL? I'm going to put the evidence. Why did I select that as her area of refinement? This part is just like the SETS 4.0. The support plan. Okay, I've asked her, how do you think how do you think you would best accommodate that area of reinforcement or refinement? So now this is the plan. Okay, so I'm going to add a course in the PLL for her, and I'm going to ask a friend of mine from the district office to come and sit with her during an IEP meeting to help coach her through, to observe and help coach her through coaching conversations or whatever I feel like would best support her. But that support plan needs to go in there. Then I restate those areas, and then I share scores, sign the documentation and the closing statement, and click save. Now it says share scores. even though you are still collecting evidence during the post-conference, you could share scores just from what you observed during the therapy session. But those scores aren't going to be published anywhere. Whoops. Remember, it's not aligned to the professional learning. But in real SC Lead, if part of that support plan said to add a course for her or to assign her a video in professional learning, that's when I would click there and do that. So now I'm going back to my evaluation. I'm going to go back to that worksheet. Remember, those are in evaluation conferences. I'm going to go back to my worksheet. I'm going to click on whatever I want to change if I need to add something. Now, remember, you're not going to take anything away. You're going to have more evidence, if anything. So, for instance, if I had scored a 2 on something, and then I got more evidence during the post-conference that makes me want to change it, I can do that. But this is also where I would go for my notes. Remember, the speech professional cannot see your worksheet. Only you, the evaluator, can see your worksheet. So at the end of the worksheet, when I'm done with it and I'm ready for everything to be solidified, then and I'm ready to share my scores, once all domains have been scored, then I would enter my PIN and sign it. 1659, sign. Now, when I go to evaluation conferences, you'll see that your worksheet has been completed. Once the worksheet is completed, and I go back to this observation, and I click details, and I click post-conference. Then I sign the post-conference. And you'll see that that first observation therapy session has been completed. Now I need, at some point, to complete an IEP meeting observation. And then bars and bubbles will start filling in. You would do the IEP meeting the exact same way. The process is the same. And remember, for that preliminary cycle evaluation conference, once I have the observations that are required, then it will come up and allow me to start a conference. But that's not going to show up until the requirements have been met. I can't have the conference without the components being present. So if that's missing, you know that something's missing, and it will always, SC Lead will always come up and tell you what's missing that's preventing that from populating. So it tells me that a scoring conference is required for the preliminary cycle. But what that means is I don't have that option because, remember, 2 or more evaluators on the team, and each evaluator must reach consensus on all the indicators before the preliminary cycle and hold a evaluation conference. So that's another component that you would see here that is required. Again, under observations, it will always tell you the minimum number has not been completed. Usually in this paragraph right here, it will tell you how many are required. If not, it's in that at a glance sheet that we shared with you earlier. Remember, at that preliminary conference, I can go over the goals and you can sign those as well at that time. as part of that preliminary conference. Each time you get closer to what you need for a met or not met, then one of these bullets is going to go away. So as soon as I meet the minimum number of observations, then that bullet will go away. As soon as I have the minimum number of observers, so remember, you've got to have two different observers for the first semester. So I only have myself as the principal. Somebody else needs to be on that team and getting in there to see that SLP and adding their worksheets in there as well, so that we can do we can come to consensus and host the consensus meeting. The trickiest part is navigating between the worksheet and the observation. Just keep in mind that the worksheet is under evaluation conferences, and the pre and post conference is under observations. We had it different, and everybody said, the feedback said we needed to move it, and we did. I don't do it every day, so I don't know. We need your feedback on that, but right now the worksheets are under evaluation conferences. All right. Anything else I can show you in the demo site before I show you where to find all the materials that will help you on the website? And I can't see the chat and share my screen at the same time. So if y'all will help me or hop on the mic.
Chat is clear at the moment.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and show you. So on our ed.sc.gov website, when you pull up ed.sc.gov and you see that cute little girl with her blue pencil, you click on educators, go over to instruction, scroll down to educator effectiveness, scroll down, and I'll just give you a brief tour. So our communications position is the one currently available. But under communications, this is where we always host the announcements for office hours, the schedule for office hours, and the recordings of office hours. Anytime we do presentations to a statewide group, most of the time we post them here. If they've been recorded or if they've been if they're being published, we publish them here. Any newsletters, memos, updates that we send out, the teacher newsletter archive, teacher webinars, Vicky's PDEP section is here, all things PDEP. The expanded ADEPT section is here. That includes the guidelines, the rubrics, the links to state statute and regs, links to certification so that you can see how certification and ADEPT work hand in hand. Here is your special areas section in the beautiful coastal teal. You will see there the resources are divided by special area. And then there's also a section for the special areas managers. If you are interested in the evaluator training for SLP, school counselors, or school librarians, you need to reach out to your special areas manager. There's one of those in every district. Your ADEPT coordinator is either the SAM or they will know who the SAM is, so reach out to them. If you're not sure, but they can enroll you in the training. It is on demand in Moodle. And it takes about 2.5 to 3 hours to complete. You get 4 hours of recertification credit for it, and you get the credential to be an evaluator. Effectiveness data and professional growth, that's the SC lead bucket and annual ADEPT data. Supporting student growth, this is Rashonda's section, the SLO section. It has great tips for SLOs and teacher leadership goals. I hate this computer. Sorry. Induction and mentoring, this is Kim's section for all the induction and mentoring guidelines and the link to the SARA website for if you need SARA resources. Our professional learning opportunities, should you need any type of training or want to enroll in another program that we do, this is that section. And then my other bucket with the office is this beautiful section right here, the Ed Prep programs. So anytime you need any information about working with your Ed Prep programs, your local colleges and universities, you can find it in this section. So that is a brief down and dirty of our website. If you click on the ADEPT for 2020, we've got some language there. It's my contact information at the office. And you'll see there are lots of resources for everything you could possibly need. We've tried to anticipate anything and head off any confusion or any questions or doubt about how, what, and when to implement. This is that requirements at a glance. It covers all three of the special areas, but it's that chart that shows you contract level and what exactly is required